Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey.
Well, hello, everybody out there. Hello, Sam Fiorani from Autoforecast Solutions.
How you doing, John?
I'm sort of doing okay. I got to explain to the audience what's going on here. So we've been hit by a massive ice storm, and power has been knocked out all over the place. And Gary Vasilash is on vacation this week. We've got Dan Neal here. We're trying to get him in, but there's, again, connectivity problems here, which we'll have to blame on the weather. And even though you see Dan right now, I don't think he hears us, and we definitely can't hear him. But I'll bet he's able to come in at some point in the program here. But while we get going here, you know, Gary Vasilash often comes up with something in history this day or this week. And Sam, you had a couple of things you thought you wanted to point out.
Oh, yeah. No, we realized that it's been 100 years since they added ethyl to gasoline, and about 100 years since Alfred Sloan took over General Motors.
Okay, explain the importance of adding ethyl to gasoline.
Well, ethyl was quieting down the NOx on cars and ending up polluting the atmosphere for a generation or two or three.
But it allowed higher compression. Engines ran far more efficiently with it until, the EPA decided, you know, we don't want to be breathing this stuff.
Yeah, no, it just got into everything, and we're noticing it. You know, now it's been 45 years since they took it out of gas now.
Yeah, that's right. And Sloan is one of the greatest presidents of General Motors in its entire existence, maybe the greatest.
Yes, yeah. No, he ranks up there with Durant and everybody else who took over that company over the years. Sloan is synonymous with General Motors. As a matter of fact, I have his book around here somewhere. It's called My Years with the General Motors.
Yeah, he had another one that they don't tout it as much at General Motors. I think it was called Confessions of an Automotive Man, or I'm not sure exactly the title right now.
Yeah, no, but I know his big one was My Years with General Motors. That was his big biography.
Yeah, look, anybody who's in the automotive business that wants to know what it's about, you ought to read that book. It's one of the classics.
Absolutely.
But Sam, let's get into some of the things that's been going on in the industry, and hopefully Dan Neal will be able to jump in on this too. But one of the things you're talking about is how much excess capacity there is in this industry right now, and that's a real problem. You know, when you can build far more cars than you've got people buying them, somebody's going to have to eat that.
Yeah, no, I've been into this industry a long time, but mentors of mine who were in this industry a lot longer than me founded the idea that excess capacity was a bad thing and how to measure it over the years. So we've taken that to the next step and looked at the world and figured out how much excess capacity. And the only problem is right now we're at a different state. There are so many startups coming in that are adding capacity to the market. Some of them stating many hundreds of thousands of units of capacity that they're bringing. In some cases, it may not actually be there, but they have the factories. They claim that they could build vehicles. So it's adding to this excess capacity. And then companies like General Motors and Ford aren't helping by adding new plants to build EVs in addition to the plants that build ICEs alongside them. Their claim is that,
somewhere out there, those ICE plants are going to close, or most of them are.
Yeah, but they don't see that yet. They think that these early adopters are raising the bar, are lifting up the whole market and adding to it, and not taking away sales of Silverados or Sierras or F-150s. And we just don't see it after the first handful of early adopters that come into the market.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons why they're building these plants dedicated to EVs is if you do that, if you dedicate a plant to an EV, you can really get a whole lot more productivity out of that plant than if you try to build ICE and PHEV and hybrid and BEV all on the same line.
So, absolutely.
Even though some of them are doing it, in fact, even GM is doing it. Spring Hill is, they're building ICE and BEV. The Cadillac Lyriq is is coming down the same line as what other plant cars do they make at Spring Hill,
Oh,
Tennessee?
they build the XT6, XT5, and GMC Acadia.
Yeah. So how much?
No, the assembly, like you said, the assembling EVs takes a different process, and so it's much more efficient to start from scratch and build the process from the ground up rather than running it down the same assembly line that you're putting engines and transmissions in. And it makes more money for the manufacturer, and it's much more efficient if you do it from scratch.
Okay, so you looked at excess capacity on a global basis. How bad is it?
Well, we've always had tens of millions of units of excess capacity just from the way the industry works. But you add in the EV startups, and then the Chinese startups, and all these different companies around the world that intend on breaking into this industry, and we're adding another 10-20% to that overcapacity. So the capacity right now we're probably running 60 to 70% capacity globally, where 80% or better is profitable.
That's the rule of thumb in the industry, that you got to have about 80% capacity utilization. And just to explain that simply, let's say you can build 100,000 cars a year. If you can build at least 80,000, that plant should be profitable. And anything above that is just money in the bank.
Absolutely. And like you said, the excess capacity will weed itself out as players fall away, as legacy manufacturers decide to pair off the ICE plants.
Hey, looks like we might be getting Dan Neal in here. Dan, can you hear us?
I can hear you. I can hear you guys. What a joy it is to be with you now. Let me just wipe off the camera.
Oh, much better.
Yeah. So are you having ice storm problems?
No, not thank God. No. Why? I know we've had some shitty weather, but poor weather. But yeah, not so far. Now I'm just backlit everywhere I go. Okay, fine. What was the question? What are you guys talking about?
We're talking about
right here.
No, not yet. Excess capacity in the industry. Sam and Autoforecast Solutions has done a big study and shown that, holy crap, this industry can build way more cars than there are customers for.
I wonder you see the net profitability for Tesla, is it just reflecting their advantages in tooling, or the fact that they don't have to carry all the rest of these industries around, and so it makes their profitability per unit lopsided? In other words, and they're carrying the excess capacity.
Yeah, they don't have a lot of excess capacity at the moment. Their new plants are running pretty well. Germany and Austin still have to come up to speed, but
I meant the
Shanghai
OEMs
is running balls out. It's amazing.
So Sam, I got to believe China's got the most excess capacity of all, hands down, right?
Oh yeah, well they've got dozens of EV startups plus all the small factories that have popped up everywhere across the country. It does have a lot of overcapacity, and we just see that going away when some of these smaller companies disappear, when some of the EV startups finally run out of money. It'll happen, and it's not too far down the pike.
I wonder about that because, China's had so much excess capacity for years, and the Chinese government even wants to see a lot of consolidation, and it's never happened because provinces and municipalities want the jobs, and they keep these plants going even if they don't make any money.
Yeah, absolutely. Those little guys just pop up everywhere and make these tiny little terrible cars. And then, the major cities are building the good cars, the cars that can be exported and sold to bigger cities and to other countries.
Yeah. So what do you think about this break-even point that Stellantis has got, 40%?
Yeah, they're doing great, especially because of Jeeps and Rams. When you've pared down your market to get rid of Dodge Darts and Chrysler 200s and all these products, even the Jeep Cherokee, when you get rid of all these products that make less money and focus on Jeeps and Rams that are making a ton of money, your profitability shoots up amazingly. It's great.
Yeah. So Dan, let's get you in on this. I know one of the things you wanted to talk about was Toyota slow walking its way into the EV segment.
Yeah, I think it's a fair critique, and I think they've been pretty retrogressive all since since they had the market advantage that they did in the early 2000s. But the most sort of telling example is when they joined the suit, the Trump administration's suit against California for California's own regulation. That was a big breaking point. And since then, I understand that Toyota has domestic interests and obligations that they can't shun. And I also understand that after Fukushima, electricity itself was, and the supply of electricity in Japan was a problem. So there were a lot of barriers to that adoption. But now I think it's quite obvious that they're just trying to hold and hedge whatever advantage they have, and I think it's going to be difficult for them in the next few years. Plus, the whole thing about the stripping out the union, manufacturing in the IRA for the batteries and cars. That was Toyota behind the scenes in Washington and certainly West Virginia.
So Toyota's argument, of course, is that, hey, wait a minute, we're all about carbon neutrality. And we think we can, this is Toyota talking, not me.
Mm-hmm.
We think we can get people to a lower carbon footprint faster and more economically by going with hybrids and PHEVs instead of pure BEVs. What's your reaction?
I think that's faulty logic, and it's also an unnecessary delay. I think any fair engineering assessment of these two technologies going forward is one is getting much, much better, and one is not. And for a host of reasons, electrification is going to take over. There is the advantages that we can look forward to in the next 5 years will make any hybridization of those cars move. Beyond that, we've seen that PHEVs, certainly PHEVs, have a lot of transient emissions that have not been counted. They have a lot of wear and tear and various other downsides that have been glossed over in, for example, Toyota's put them as a solution.
Sam, what do you think? Is Toyota crazy like a fox or just crazy?
Well, we're really not sure how deep the market is for EVs, and right now, few companies are making money at it. So in that case, Toyota is on the right track. But in order to get into China, to get into Western Europe long term, to get into North America long term, you're going to have to be EV. And their idea that plug-in hybrids are quicker and cleaner, the idea isn't bad, except for the fact that nobody plugs them in. Yeah. If you plug them in, it might work, but nobody does that. So if you're hanging your hat on cleaning up the emissions by people plugging them in, you've lost already.
I'll just say, because we'll get pushback for what you said, and I agree with you. A lot of people don't plug in. In fact, like at least half of them don't plug it in, or don't plug it in on an ongoing basis. Right.
And there's a linear inverse relationship between the distance that it can go and the likelihood that people will plug them in. If it goes 20 miles on a charge, 80% of people won't bother. 90%. These behavioral studies are all the same. They all return roughly the same data. And that's so. And by the way, these in terms of compliance, PHEVs are wildly overcompensated still, even in California and certainly in Europe. And they're trying to close those loopholes. I'm actually surprised that, let's say Ferrari and Lamborghini and a few others are going to manage to continue to make a few bespoke V12s for the very wealthy post 2035. That will be road legal. I don't know how that is going to stand up over time in an egalitarian Europe.
Yeah. I understand Toyota's argument that, hey, nobody's making money on EVs right now. Well, we know Tesla's making gobs of money on EVs right now. But the main reason others aren't, notably Ford with the F-150 Lightning, Chevy, and it's all about scale. You have to sell a whole lot more of these things. Getting back to our earlier conversation about capacity utilization, you got to get the capacity utilization of those EV plants over 80%. And so if you're saying, oh, we'll wait until things pick up, I think it's too late. I think this is a big flaw in Toyota's logic and how it thinks it's going to catch up later in the decade. And another thing, too, where I think its logic is flawed is right now, everybody, I say everybody, so many automakers, GM and Ford notably at the front of the line in this, locking up the supply chains in lithium, in cobalt, in manganese, in nickel, and everything that you need. And if Toyota shows up in 3 or 4 years, where the hell are they going to get everything they need?
Yeah, you make great points on all the access to all the parts for batteries. Getting a supplier for batteries will be tough because all that capacity is being absorbed just as it comes online. So when GM or Ford or eventually Honda and Nissan and everybody else absorbs all that capacity, Toyota is going to be left behind with just the capacity for their plugins, for their hybrids.
I want to just add to that. Now, it's that's sort of the most pessimistic view. Here's a more, let's say, middle of the road prediction. Toyota's hung a lot of its prestige on a different kind of battery, and that it doesn't have the drawbacks of amorphous lithium and with nickel and rare earths. So we're waiting yet for Toyota to have this better battery. If they have banked their fires, knowing that eventually their better battery will come along and it will be commercial. They first said it was going to be commercialized in 2023, if I recall. And so let's give them 3 extra years. But it could possibly be a strategic choice to sort of to fall back on the ropes, to take the beating early on in the press, make the argument the best you can, which is what they're doing about PHEVs now, knowing that it'll be more economical to come back with a battery twice as powerful, half as cost, and set them on the path finally to profitability.
You're talking about solid state battery, and they're not the only ones working on it. In fact, you got people all over the world working on solid state batteries. I find it hard to believe that Toyota, off on its own, figured out some sort of breakthrough that's going to leapfrog it in front of everybody else. I'm not saying it's impossible. It is possible, but I just don't think that's what's going to happen.
When they were talking about it 3 years ago, that was their attitude. They certainly were suggesting that now was later would be better to lead from behind, I guess.
But would it make sense for Toyota to come in and say, we're not building EVs, and then suddenly, look, we've got this great EV? Is that the path to take, rather than say we're moving towards EV? We've got this engineering work. Would that look better to the stock market, to the customers, to everybody else, rather than saying no EVs because it's not profitable, and then suddenly jump into the market?
The Japanese government plays a big part in this too, because Toyota can't just turn on a dime, irrespective of the ups and downs of how good the product or technology is. They have to keep 150,000 people working in the homeland. And that's the top line, right? That you got to cover that first. So they are a bit constricted in terms of, and they have other obligations that other manufacturers don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but EVs represent the fastest growing segment in the market right now. No matter where you look in the major markets, Europe, US, China. And my question to Toyota is, don't you want to be in the fastest growing segment in the market? I mean, they're losing. Look how successful Hyundai and Kia are turning out to be in this segment. And look at the prices they're commanding. I mean, they're flipping the whole brand image. They used to be cheap and cheerful. Now they're perceived as bleeding edge EVs, very competent, right there with the best of anybody else, whether it's Mercedes or Tesla or whoever. And I think this is a huge mistake to miss out on that. And not just here, but especially in China.
Well, Sam, do you want to take a guess as to when Toyota might declare the Japanese equivalent of bankruptcy? Chapter 11.
I can't imagine that they would. It was hard enough when General Motors did, and that was more of a write-off than an actual bankruptcy. So Toyota is not going to do that, but they will snowball into the market eventually. And I expect them to be a full player by the end of the decade, and probably about the time when the whole market becomes profitable, because you only have Tesla really making money at EVs at the moment, and they're the only ones building any significant volumes. Once everybody else gets there, and there's a significant, the growth in the market is based on a small starting point. So once you get to 10, 15, 20% of the market, now we can start talking about profits on these vehicles rather than just the small niche that it is now.
Well, when people say, it's a small niche, they don't sell a lot of them, they should go, they're not taking into account the fact that, there's a huge unmet demand. There's hundreds of thousands of people out there who want electric vehicles and can't get them. And to look at sales data to suggest that that's some sort of natural, the water level of the market, I think isn't true. If General Motors had 1 million EVs to sell today, they could sell them tomorrow. But speaking of GM, John, you mentioned it before about investing heavily in a technology like the Ultium battery platform, which, as we now know, as we look over the lithium iron phosphates that's coming online, it's a high price, diamond-plated battery technology, and they are wed to it body and soul. And it has a number of real distinct disadvantages. Namely, it is not a load-bearing. The batteries itself are not load-bearing, and so you lose a lot of that weight efficiency right there. And then, because they're committed to these absurd numbers like 400 and 500 miles of range, you've got these behemoths that weigh 10,000 pounds. I'm sorry, I studied art history, but that doesn't seem like good engineering to me.
Well, look, I'm not going to argue about they're not doing, cell to pack or cell to chassis, which is now the next step beyond cell to pack. But, wait till they get their whole EV line out there. What they've led is with the most expensive stuff, because at least you got a shot at making some money with, $100,000 plus Hummer EVs and whatever, $60,000 Cadillac Lyrics and the like. I'll judge GM's whole approach once they get the Blazers and the Equinoxes and those out, and the full-size Chevy pickup. All that's coming right now. So I'm not going to trash GM's strategy too much, because I think that the payoff for GM could be huge, in the sense that this Ultium platform is going to serve everything, every market segment. And I think once they get over this hump right now of, new product development, and, I was just looking at the numbers. They spent $2 billion more than Stellantis did last year in new product development. Stellantis is a laggard when it comes to BEVs. One of the reasons,
still just 1%. That's still just 1%. Went from 6 to 7, I think, 7 to 8.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah. No, I hear you. But what I'm getting at is one of the reasons why Stellantis has been so profitable, or was so profitable last year, is it spent $2 billion less than GM did developing EVs.
And guess who's going to be the executive of the year? Carlos Tavares, who has invested nothing in the future, who has the forward vision, like, me without these. I mean, oh my God, what the hell? I can't talk about failing upward.
But what I'm getting at is GM's going to get over this hump, and then they're going to be in the position that Stellantis is. At the same time, Stellantis and everybody else is going to have to be making these big expenditures.
I don't know. I'm having a little trouble with that. I think that I honestly think the Ultium platform gives away a lot of efficiency on weight and energy and density. I think also that they're because it's such a long-term thing for them, they are locked into it in a way that doesn't give them a lot of latitude. It was one thing for Toyota to be locked into the world's best batteries and best motor and controllers. It's now, I'm not so sure, but I'm glad that, believe me, I'm glad that you think they're doing the right thing. That means a lot to me. So anyway.
Well, let's get Sam's thoughts on this.
Yeah, no, I'm waiting for the Stella platforms to hit the market. I'm waiting to see what Stellantis actually brings. They do build electric vehicles in Europe. They have a handful here and there across different model lines, and they are spreading them across the smaller lines. But once they get to the North America, where we get to see the Stella frame and the Stella large platforms blossom, I want to see what they can do. The large and the frame seem to be able to handle an ICE as well. So will they get the efficiencies that they can get out of an electric dedicated platform? I'm not sure, but it'll be interesting to see. And all the complaints that everybody's having about the Lightning not having enough range, not being able to tow, the Ram Rev, when it has an ICE as a power generator, should be able to give you additional range and allow you to fuel up in 5 minutes. That could be a game changer for that market for full-size trucks.
Look, I think Ford's done a terrific job with the Lightning, but Dan, you don't seem to like that thing.
No, I like the Lightning. I don't like the recall. Of course, that's a little bit problematic. I tell you what, I also find objectionable is getting this advanced product out there and calling, it's job one, and then just letting the market starve for these products and writing all of this advanced PR. You mentioned, and I think it's fair to say, GM has talked up these coming EVs until you are sold on it, and good. You're probably right. You're closer to the action than I am. But it just this Irish wedding or Irish engagement where it just takes forever to get to market. In the meantime, people who write to me are genuinely put out that they can't buy the cars that they read about.
Right. Look, I like GM strategy. I've said this multiple times. I think they're several years ahead of all the other legacies. I mean, all the other legacies, but something's gone wrong there. I mean, they're just trickling out lyrics. They're trickling out Hummers. I don't know what the issue is, but if you look at the fourth quarter of last year, there's 90 days in a quarter, right? I think they delivered 82 vehicles. It's not even one a day. I mean, what the hell is going on there?
These are practically bespoke, like they're like VPNs or validation prototypes that are getting cranked out there. They could recall the whole smash, and who would know the difference, right?
Right. Yeah. No, that's right. But, the thing is, there's a theory out there in this town, Detroit, certainly, that GM is deliberately slow walking this because it's going to lose money on them. So why rush to it? I don't buy it. And I don't buy that argument. And I'll tell you why, because they've done all the engineering. They've tooled up the plants. They've hired all the people to build this stuff. I mean, you're losing money by not building them.
But you're also getting more money on the ones you do sell because there's so few of them that there's no negotiation. You can sell them for whatever you can get out of them. It kind of makes sense on this end of the tail when you just get to the very beginning of this ramp up. Once you get into the meat of it and you're selling 1,000 a month, then you no longer have that advantage.
Yeah, but now's the time. If I'm right and GM has this 2 to 3 year advantage, now's when you put the pedal to the metal. This is your opportunity to bury the competition.
If Dan's right and there's all these people waiting for these EVs, then they're definitely behind the 8 ball on this one. They should have all the ones that they can get out there, but I just don't think the market is there yet. It's not warmed up yet. It's not ready to take on tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of EVs a month from General Motors alone, let alone the whole market.
Now that on that last point, I agree. And now, but it's a beautiful thing because it's all going to happen organically. Not everybody can get along with what we call medium range EVs. It's going to go to a certain cadre and a certain income and a certain region, and it's going to proliferate slowly. And it would appear to me that I don't know who's checking who, but the proliferation of charging and EV sales is sort of going to naturally, wash over the country in waves. And 10 years from now, this conversation will seem very, quaint and obsolete, especially after the IRAs. The big problem was people blame the automobile or the technology for an infrastructural problem. We don't expect cars to go 500 miles on a tank of gas. So we will fix this infrastructure problem in a blink. In terms of the endeavors of man, it's not a big deal. We can do it, but we haven't done it yet. As far as General Motors is concerned, all that spending, let's say every car maker I've talked to in the past 10 years has told me the same thing. They're committed to the same quarterly returns every quarter after quarter, year after year. They are committed to a 7% R&D budget. They are committed to this, that, and the other. So the time to spend, which Elon Musk and Tesla went through in the aughts and the teens, has almost passed them in a lot of ways. And the Chinese manufacturers were spending and were investing. And so I think General Motors is going to have a hard time catching the Chinese.
General Motors will demonstrate it when they can actually get an Equinox out of there. I'm going to say under $40,000. They say it's going to be close to 30. If they get it near $30,000, I'm paying someone off on a bet on that one, because it's not going to be anywhere close.
A standing ovation for me. I would be so excited if that were the case. God knows I'm not rooting against him. I'm just like, no. Let's get real,
Yeah.
Hey, look, guys, we got to take a quick commercial break here. Give a shout out to our great sponsor, Bridgestone, and we'll be back talking more in just 30 seconds.
How do Bridgestone tires stop shorter on wet roads? It's their HydroTrack technology. But you don't have to know how the science works, just where the brake is. What really matters is their Bridgestone.
All right, we're back. Sam and I are back. And here comes Dan rushing to the chair. So what the hell's going to happen with all these startups? I mean, we just saw Rivian. They didn't lose as much money last year as the year before, but they're still losing over $1 billion. They can't seem to get cars running down the line. That's just lucid. And then Rivian, same problem. It just can't seem to. Hey, by the way, we love dogs barking in the background. Screaming babies are even better, so don't worry about it.
If I have a screaming baby, I'm coming over where you are.
But yeah, Sam, you pick it up. What the hell's going to happen with all these startups?
Yeah, we just did an outline of some of the top startups to say where they're at and their success over the near term. And Rivian was always our baby. It was the one we liked among the startups. Their numbers were not astronomical. They weren't coming in saying we're going to build 250,000 in our third year. They ramped up nicely. They haven't even matched that ramp up yet. So finding money to keep going at this point where they're losing money, they're not building enough vehicles, they're having problems ramping up, they're laying off people.
Sam, should they have opened this or start building a second plant? I mean, they haven't even got their first plant up and running, and that was one that they bought, right? They got the old Mitsubishi plant.
Right,
and
right.
Was this their bridge too far going to that new plant in Georgia?
Well, they haven't started building it yet. So, the idea that they announced the plant there shows at least the investors, I guess, that they're so progressive and they're so on the move that they're going to need a second plant. They need to fill the first plant before they can move on to the second plant. And they're not far enough down the road to fill that plant in the foreseeable future. Even before 26, we don't expect them to fill that plant, which is when the Atlanta plant was supposed to start. So
wait a minute, they haven't even started building the new plant?
They have the ability to. I think they have the property, but I don't believe they've actually.
I assumed they were building it because they are burning through cash like there's no tomorrow.
And they're burning through cash because they have too many people. They have too much going on. They're developing more vehicles. They have other vehicles coming in. There's a lot of money to be burnt, and they were the one we liked. And they had high enough volume, but not high enough that it scared us. Their ramp up was nice. This isn't a Faraday. This isn't a Lucid. These aren't niche players. This was a mainstream player that could make money. So this is the one we're kind of on the fence on right now.
What's the problem? Chip shortage, or they just can't figure out how to bolt these things together, or what?
Getting the quality there and building them fast enough to get them out. I see them on the road, and we're half a country away from the plant, so they're rolling out. People are buying them, but it's just they're not getting enough of them. They're not rolling it out fast enough, and like I said, they had to lay off people on the factory line. So it's a problem for a startup like this.
Yeah.
Especially when you're counting on investment money from the stock market.
Just may I? With regard to Rivian, I'm reminded of King Krusty's and the tale of the Procrustean bed. Rivian's problem is it was doomed from jump because it signed a deal with Jeff Bezos that they had to deliver all of those vans before they could execute fully on the passenger car or the truck, the Rivian truck and SUV. And of course, the provisos of this agreement say that if at any point they do not deliver these vans at the right time and the right costs, the rest of the contract can be rendered void. So this is pretty much is it Scaringe? Is how you pronounce this man's name?
Scaringe.
Scaringe had a gun pointed to its head the whole time, and yes, it was undercapitalized. That's an obvious thing, it's an obvious mistake. But I think that they stand to be completely undone by the terms of their original $770 million loan. And I think that and Bezos, as we've seen, anybody who owns a 500-foot sailboat is capable of anything. I mean,
so does Fisker have the right strategy here? So-called light asset, go hire Magna and Foxconn to build your cars for you.
Yeah, the asset light approach is a good approach for an EV startup, especially as you're ramping up until you get to 150,000 a year. It makes much more sense to farm out the production to somebody else. But Fisker is really an unknown. Nobody knows who they are. How are you going to roll out tens of thousands of these crossovers in a market that will already have crossovers of EVs around by General Motors, by Ford, by other manufacturers? You're going to need to make an aura. That our whole idea of selling EVs in this day and age is building an aura around them. It's not just making a great EV. Tesla is selling on name. Tesla is the modern BMW that from the 80s or Porsche from the 70s. It becomes what it's what you want to buy. It's what you want to have. It's jewelry. You want someone to say, "Oh, he's a Tesla owner." That's how it was with BMWs just a few decades ago. Fisker doesn't have that image, and Rivian is getting it. Rivian kind of has that image, but Fisker's an unknown at this point. You still have to build up that undercurrent to get enough people to want to buy it.
And those who do know him are skeptical.
Like he's only had two failed manufacturers, right?
You're going to build them in Valmet, then you're going to build them in Grand. Okay. So fine. Here's the problem, and I think the Fisker. Come on. It's these are models and drawings. Getting into production is a whole other thing. Yes, light. I get having a light touch with these startups is a good idea. That's why I think a surprising number of these Chinese startups, regional or urban, small Chinese startups, may in fact last because the threshold is so much lower to manufacturing than at least small scale manufacturing. Anyway, Fisker, maybe, I don't know. Let's get to Lucid though. I did now this is obviously this is a pretty charismatic product, but it was anyone who ever sat through a few of those briefings and rode in the back of that car who was like ever on your show probably went, how's that gonna work? When do those lines cross? Never. They will never cross unless the Saudi owners prop the company up in perpetuity, which looks like what it is. I mean, at this point, it's a sinecure. It doesn't have to make money. It only has to wave the flag, and it can be given to princes and potentates. It is supposedly a sign of greater engagement with the West. But to me, everything that the Saudis are involved with at a high, like a boardroom level, they can't manage. Why would you? They can't manage, right? They go to school, they go to Wharton, and they go to Oxford to study business, but they don't practice it. And so I find that to be it's just like it's a how do you say, the Achilles heel, to mix my metaphors. It's a fatal flaw. Is the unwillingness to do the hard work of management.
I'm kind of surprised at the success of Lucid to this point. I was at a car show last fall, and the gentleman who was judging with me owned one. And I'm like, I actually met an owner of a Lucid. And at that point, there were only a few hundred out there in the world. So the fact that they're rolling out there, that people like them, the owner that I talked to just loved his car. But to your point, the Saudis are investing in this company. They've got a plant planned for Saudi Arabia for more of them. Again, back to the Rivian problem. We're not filling one plant. We're going to build a second plant now. And they want to roll out 100,000 to the Saudis. That's years worth of production for this company. You're not going to get to that point in a long time.
If ever. Yeah, no. In fact, it looks now like the Saudi Public Investment Fund is trying to mash Aston Martin and Lucid together to some degree, because the Saudis are into Aston Martin as well. Aston Martin needs electrics. Lucid needs...
Well, and that 900 volt system, was evolved out of Formula E, and that's kind of like, that's their special sauce, and it will be for the foreseeable future. Although, have you ever seen one of those batteries opened up?
No.
It is a forest of little whiskery connectors to stupid little batteries. You think that could not possibly work in a million years. How robust can these little... It looks like a crystal radio whisker, each one attached to an anode. It's like, and it's a 900 volt. It comes right out of the Formula E car. But anyway.
Yeah, and then the Saudis are going to have Sear. They have their own brand that's starting up soon. They've tried all these different investments of automotive production in Saudi Arabia over the past few years. At one point, Land Rover was going to build in Saudi Arabia as well.
Right.
So there are all these different companies that are looking to build in Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia just needs some investment longer term than oil, and they can see the end of automotive oil use. I don't think it's going to happen in the next 20 years, 30 years maybe. But King
Faisal said his grandchildren rode camels. King Faisal said his grandchildren would ride camels, and they would return to the desert. Which I think, I think in terms of the money, the investment, trying to build a 21st century economy in Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Emirates, and all of these have intimate ties with Western car makers. I believe this is going to be one of the fault lines in East and West, is the economic and industrial engagement of these powerful Middle Eastern interests, given the social and backdrop that exists there.
Yeah.
Sam, you mentioned JLR, Jaguar Land Rover, was going to build a plant in Saudi Arabia. Remember, they said they were going to build one in Brazil, and we're even scouting sites in the United States. I mean, what the hell happened there? I mean, I worry for Jaguar especially. They're supposed to go all electric by 2025, and so far they can't even give the I-Pace away.
Yeah, they're going to need better vehicles than the I-Pace. We had one as a test car on literally the coldest day of the winter 3 years ago in Philadelphia, and I couldn't drive to the car show because it couldn't get me far enough there and back. The next generation of EVs has to be better, and I've got to think that Tata knows that they have to do something with Jaguar Land Rover in the next 5 years. I'm a big Jaguar fan. My previous car was a Jaguar. I love the cars. Getting enough of them to get enough people who are like me to buy them is the big problem, because nobody's buying a Jaguar anymore. Land Rover still has some cachet in the market, but I can see Jaguar disappearing quietly into the sunset in the next 10 years if they don't come up with 2 or 3 hits. They need to have something that works, that has the demand that a Model 3 or a Model S has, something to pull buyers in, because nobody talks about Jaguar except for us. And we only talk about them because we remember the grand old days when Jaguar made a nice car.
Yeah, I still think they make nice cars, but I don't think they're going to last 10 years if they don't come up with what you're talking about, Sam. I mean, they better have 2 or 3 kick-ass EVs in the market before 2025 if they think they're going to go 100% EV by then.
Oh yeah. No, they've got a coupe, they've got a sport utility. They're on the way, but you got to have a reason to buy them when there's so many choices in the marketplace, and just putting a leaping Jaguar on the hood is not going to sell a car just for that reason. I need.
Looks like Sam froze up a second.
Sorry, are you there?
Yeah, you're there. You
Okay,
froze up,
good.
or at least on my end, you froze up for a second there.
Yeah, no, I can fully see them needing that breakthrough, that vehicle that makes people want to buy a Jaguar. But like you said, if it's not in the next generation, they won't be around in 10 years.
So Dan, every time I see any of your posts, you're in some exotic location driving some sort of exotic car. What the hell's going to happen with all the exotics with this move to EVs?
Well, it's funny you should ask that, because I just did the rounds of the usual suspects in Aston and Ferrari, and as Sean and you guys reported today, there's a provision in the EU that some of these small volume manufacturers can continue to build gas powered cars.
If it's under 1,000 a year, if the company,
you're right.
The company, so Ferrari doesn't qualify in that regard, neither does Lambo or most of them.
Well, no, it's going to be a problem, but also in the UK, we're sort of speaking about Jaguar. They're also massaging these various levels and limits to try to. On one hand, achieve the greater public good of cutting emissions, but at the same time, not strangling these small charismatic businesses that mean so much to the country. Personally, I'm a huge. I mean, I think it should all be EV, but the 10,000 and the 10,000 limit might be a little. That might yet be brought down. I don't know how sustainable that number is in public opinion in Europe. Anyway, but it does seem that. If you have just the right look and feel and size, you can get by as an exotic manufacturer. I think it's pretty. I think who is it? The man who makes the T50. Gordon Murray. Gordon Murray's probably going to be okay, and because it's like selling. Well, it's like breeding and selling racehorses, and I'm sure he'll do just fine.
Well, Italy just came out and said, hey, let's go for a 90% reduction in CO2, not 100%. And, Carlos Tavares has been talking about, hey, we're going a little too fast on this. In the past, Oliver Zipsa at BMW has said the same thing. I just wonder, how hard and fast is this rule that we're going to ban the ICE in 2035?
Well, let me be the contrarian on the exotic cars, because it makes perfect sense to make an electric Bugatti, Ferrari, Lamborghini. They're fast. Rolls-Royce. But they're fast. Yeah, you really can't get that kind of acceleration out of a clean, just emissions-friendly car with a V12 or turbocharged V8 or something like that. That making it an electric vehicle allows you to get to the levels of exotic car and no emissions. So I just think it makes perfect sense. You're not driving these cars cross country. You're not taking your Enzo cross country on a trip. It's just to show off to your neighbors and to drive to the next town over and on a date night. That's about it.
This is my preach it brother. My hand preach it brother. Absolutely.
Yeah, but
waiting for. I didn't have a question.
But as you guys know, it's the sound of the engine, it's the vibration, it's the shifting, it's using the clutch, hopefully,
we can see that all of those emotional defectives are served every year at no great trouble. It's a numbers thing. There's only, there are only so many rich numbnuts who want to buy such cars, and that's to a public policy advantage. But you're absolutely right, Sam. I mean, so many cars would be better, electric, Rolls-Royce being the one. But I've driven a McLaren GT. Maybe you've driven this too. It's their touring car, and it's built to be super quiet. And I'm like, well, if it's going to be this quiet, why shouldn't it be electric? I mean, my God. And it only weighs, it doesn't weigh as big as a minute. But anyway, so I think that there will probably still be electric cars, still electric exotics, except for that one, the Hispano Suiza. That needs to be burned at the stake. My God, that's the ugliest car in the world. It's oh my God, it's like the Aurora. You remember that father? What's his name? The Aurora.
I got a book full of EVs and startups that will turn you even that the Hispano Suiza is a good looking car. Trust me. I've got some other ones in the book here, but
look forward to seeing those.
But your point about Rolls Royce, I drove an electric G90, Genesis G90, and a lot of these electric vehicles don't have any character to them, and it disappoints me when I drive it. I'm like, I don't even remember that car that I drove because it just had nothing to stand out for. It didn't shift, it didn't make noise, it didn't do anything. I can't tell you what was great about that car. But I drove the G90 and I'm like, I understand the buyer of this car. The buyer of this car was the guy who drove a Cadillac or a Rolls Royce and just wanted isolated from the world. There's no sound. It's as quick as anything. But it was deadly silent. I'm like, I finally understand the luxury buyer in this car.
Okay, so one last topic I'll throw out there to you guys. Porsche is, investing in clean gasoline, no carbon gasoline. They're down in Chile. They're using solar power. They're taking CO2. They're mixing it with hydrogen. They're getting ethanol out of that, refining it into gasoline. Is this the solution for the exotics? I don't think they're going to be able to scale this up, and the expense of this stuff is through the roof. But for the exotics, do you think this is the savior, or should they just go electric?
Sam, I have very definite opinions about this, but you go ahead.
Well, I think the exotics should go electric. It just makes much more sense. But for the people who want to pay however many dollars a gallon it's going to cost for the carbon-free gas, there are going to be a handful of people who just want that sound of that V12. They want all those perks that come with an internal combustion engine. And if you can afford $10, $15, $20 a gallon, whatever it's going to cost, and that's just in the States, it's got to be like $50 in Europe. If you can afford it and you want that for the noise of a V12, more power to you. But it's a novelty.
Okay, so
let's hear your definite opinion, Dan.
I didn't want to interrupt. This is a scandal and a crock. The Mercedes-Benz and BMW have both committed to independently audited carbon evaluations leading up to their carbon neutrality pledges of 2040. Now, it is interesting that both companies use the same auditor. Like there's only one person in the world who can do this arithmetic. But anyway, it's independent and it's supposed to be, double. It's really honest bookkeeping. Porsche is not in that group. And so I think it's fair to scrutinize and interrogate whatever carbon numbers, abatement numbers they offer. At the same time, to be fair, you look at something like megacasting. Megacasting is aluminum is more energy intensive as a material than steel, just full stop, 20%. And pushing it into giant castings at hundreds of thousands of pounds of pressure has got to add measurably to its energy input. So let's be sure that it's not it's not a lopsided contribution. But those sorts of evaluations, that sort of arithmetic does need to be done. And I don't think what those fuels will stack up anyway.
Yeah. And here's I'm preaching to the choir. Hey, brother, yes, I'm totally in total life cycle emissions, total life cycle. And some people talk of cradle to grave, but that's not the right metric. Because what's the grave? The grave is the landfill. Screw that. You need to measure total life cycle emissions from cradle to cradle, including full recycling or a reuse of materials. And,
you got to do a show. You got to do a show about the BMW system. I'm sure you have. I've seen you got it. I'm sure you have many shows on this. But the BMW plan is compelling and very thorough. And I would say, its expectations are and goalposts are reachable.
Okay, so I got to do some homework because I'm not familiar with it. And once I read up on that, I'm going to have both of you guys back on the show and we'll discuss it. So Sam, if you don't know about it, you bone up on this thing too, and we'll do a whole nother show. But with this, we're going to wrap it up. You guys are terrific. This has been a fascinating discussion, even though we stumbled all over the place because of technical issues, this ice storm and the like, and internet connection. But
sorry, that was me.
Right. So thanks, you guys.
Better now.
Good job.
Bye, guys. Pleasure to be here. Bye, John. Bye, Sam. See you.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey.
If you like this program and would like to learn more about the automotive industry, check out our website at autoline.tv or look for us on YouTube on the Autoline channel.